Something just broke in the global financial system. And I'm not talking about a stock crash or a bank failure. I'm talking about the largest asset manager in human history quietly, systematically, moving $2.1 trillion away from American assets. BlackRock, the company that controls more money than most countries produce. The company that whispers in the ears of central banks. The company that's supposed to be the ultimate insider. They just voted no confidence in America. $2.1 trillion. And let that number sink in. That's larger than the GDP of India. That's bigger than the entire economy of Canada. That's more money than most nations will see in a century. And it just left American shores, quietly, systematically, without headlines, screaming the obvious truth. While you were watching Netflix and scrolling social media, BlackRock executed the largest capital reallocation in modern financial history. Not over years, over months. $2.1 trillion shifted away from dollar-denominated assets into foreign markets, emerging economies, European infrastructure, Asian real estate. Assets that don't depend on American stability, assets that don't require American dominance. But this isn't just any asset manager making this move. This is BlackRock, the Shadow Federal Reserve, the company that owns pieces of every major corporation in America, the entity that has $10 trillion under management. When they speak, markets listen. When they move, the earth shifts. When they panic, empires fall. But here's what makes this terrifying. This exact move has happened before, 3 times in the last 500 years. Same pattern, same stages, same devastating outcome. And every single time, the empire holding the reserve currency collapsed within 36 months of the smart money leaving. The pattern is mathematical, it's predictable, and it's unstoppable once it reaches this point. Spain, the Dutch Republic, Britain, all followed the identical 4-stage death spiral. All ignored the warning signs. All believed they were different. All believed their empire was eternal. All collapsed when their currency lost reserve status and the world moved on without them. Now it's America's turn, and BlackRock just fired the starting gun. Let me show you what's really happening behind the curtain. While politicians were arguing about debt ceilings and economists were debating soft landings, the most connected financial institution on earth was reading the writing on the wall. They were seeing something the public isn't supposed to see, something that made them panic. Because you have to understand what BlackRock represents. This isn't just another investment company. This is the Federal Reserve's right hand. This is the entity that bought bonds for the Fed during COVID. This is the company that manages money for central banks, sovereign wealth funds, the largest pension systems on the planet. They have access to data you'll never see. They have meetings you'll never know happened. They have intelligence networks that make the CIA look amateur. When BlackRock moves, it's because they know something. And what they know is that America just crossed the point of no return. But here's where it gets darker. This move didn't happen overnight. This was planned, coordinated. While you were told everything was fine, BlackRock was quietly liquidating American positions and rotating into foreign assets. They targeted specific sectors, long-term treasury bonds, American real estate investment trusts, dollar-denominated corporate debt. They systematically dismantled their faith in American financial instruments and replaced them with assets for a post-American world. European infrastructure bonds, Asian sovereign debt, emerging market currencies, gold mining companies, energy assets outside American control, $38 trillion in debt. That's where we are right now. Not next year, not projected, sitting on the books today, but that's just the government. Add corporate debt, household debt, financial sector debt, and you get over $100 trillion. That's 370% of GDP. For context, Spain defaulted at 200% debt to GDP. The Dutch Republic collapsed at 250%. Britain lost reserve currency status at 130%. America is at 370% and climbing. The mathematics don't lie. The system is breaking. But debt isn't what triggered BlackRock's exodus. Debt they could manage, debt they could monetize. What triggered the panic was the realization that America has entered stage 3 of the empire collapse cycle. The stage where the smart money leaves, the stage where collapse becomes inevitable. This is where things stop making sense to most people, because on the surface, everything looks fine. Stock market's near all-time highs, unemployment low, GDP growing. But BlackRock isn't looking at the surface. They're looking at the capital flows underneath. And what they're seeing is a silent exodus that's already begun. China has sold over $300 billion in U.S. treasuries in the last decade. Japan, our largest creditor, has reduced their position by $220 billion since 2022. Saudi Arabia is quietly diversifying away from dollars. Switzerland, Belgium, France, all reducing exposure. Even the Federal Reserve is shrinking its own balance sheet. The foreign buyers are disappearing. The only entity left buying U.S. debt in size is the U.S. government itself. They're printing money to buy their own bonds. That's not strength. That's desperation. That's the hallmark of a dying currency. And BlackRock saw it coming. They saw the pattern that's played out 3 times before in history. They saw stage 3 beginning, and they acted. Let me explain the pattern. Every reserve currency empire follows the same 4 stages. Stage 1 is the ascension phase. Capital floods in. The currency becomes the global standard. Banks expand. Markets boom. Innovation accelerates. Confidence is absolute. America went through this from 1945 to 1971. 26 years of absolute dominance after winning World War II. Stage 2 is the overextension phase. Success breeds arrogance. The government starts spending beyond its means. Military expansion, foreign interventions, domestic programs, all funded with borrowed money. Asset prices inflate, everyone feels wealthy. Central banks print money to keep it going. America entered this phase in 1971 when Nixon closed the gold window. 54 years of debt accumulation, of living beyond our means. Stage 3 is the silent exodus. The smart money sees what's coming, not the public, not the politicians, just the people who read balance sheets. Major institutions start quietly rotating capital out. No announcements, no press releases, just systematic, calculated movement into safer jurisdictions. This is where we are right now. This is what BlackRock just confirmed. Stage 4 is the collapse. The currency loses reserve status. Foreign central banks dump their holdings. Inflation explodes, interest rates spike, asset prices crash simultaneously, banks fail, pensions evaporate, the middle class gets destroyed. Political chaos follows. We've seen this pattern 3 times before. Spain in the 1500s was the global superpower. Spanish galleons loaded with gold and silver. The Spanish real was the world's reserve currency. Madrid was the center of global finance. Then they overextended. Wars with France, England, the Ottoman Empire, the Dutch. Military spending at 300% of revenue. Borrowed from Italian banks, German merchants, anyone who would lend. But gold kept flowing, so nobody worried. By 1555, the smart money started moving. Banking families transferred assets to Genoa. The Fugger family demanded repayment in gold instead of promises. Wealthy merchants moved operations to Amsterdam. They could read the statements. Spain was functionally bankrupt, paying 40% interest on loans. 1557, Spain defaulted for the first time. 1560, again. 1575, again. 1596, again. 4 defaults in 40 years. Currency collapsed. Spanish power evaporated. The Golden Age was over forever. The money moved north to Amsterdam. The Dutch Republic became the next financial center. The guilder became the reserve currency. Then they overextended. Wars with everyone. Government debt increased 20-fold. Printed money to pay for it. Tulip bubbles. The Bank of Amsterdam was secretly lending depositor money to fund wars. A Ponzi scheme. By 1690, the smart money moved to London. Banking families relocated. Why? The Bank of Amsterdam was broke, using new deposits to pay old withdrawals. 1795, French armies invaded. The guilder collapsed. 150 years of dominance gone in months. Britain became the next empire. The pound was the global reserve currency for 200 years. Then came 2 world wars. Government debt went from 30% to 130% of GDP. Britain ended technically victorious, but financially destroyed. By 1949, the exodus began. Corporations moved to America. Wealthy families transferred assets overseas. 1967, the pound devalued 14.3% overnight. 1976, Britain went to the IMF for a bailout. The pound lost reserve status forever. 3 empires, 3 reserve currencies, same 4-stage pattern, same outcome. Spain, the Dutch Republic, Britain. All followed the exact same path from dominance to collapse. Now it's America's turn. And we're deep in stage 3. This is where the system starts leaking, where the foundation cracks, where the smart money reads the signals and acts before the public catches on. BlackRock moving $2.1 trillion isn't market timing. It's not portfolio rebalancing. It's survival, because they know what comes next. They know that stage 3 doesn't last forever. Historically, 18 to 36 months from start to finish, and we're probably 12 to 15 months in based on when the foreign selling accelerated. They know that when stage 4 hits, it hits fast. The currency loses reserve status gradually, then suddenly. Countries start settling trade in other currencies. Yuan, euros. Bilateral agreements that bypass the dollar entirely. It's already happening. China and Brazil trading in yuan. India and Russia settling in rupees. BRICS nations developing alternative payment systems. Over 40% of global GDP is now in BRICS-aligned countries building infrastructure to trade without dollars. The petrodollar system is fracturing. Saudi Arabia has indicated willingness to accept other currencies for oil. The dollar's exclusive grip on energy markets is loosening. And when dollar demand drops significantly, what happens to all those dollars sitting in foreign central banks? They come home. They flood the U.S. economy. That's when inflation goes vertical. That's when the Fed faces an impossible choice. Raise interest rates dramatically to crush inflation, which makes the $38 trillion debt completely unpayable and crashes the economy. Or keep printing, which destroys the currency through hyperinflation. Either path leads to the same place. Asset prices crash because liquidity disappears. Stocks, bonds, real estate, everything deflates simultaneously. Banks fail. Pension funds go insolvent. Insurance companies collapse. The cascade begins. And the middle class, holding most of their wealth in dollars and dollar-denominated assets, gets completely wiped out. This isn't speculation. This is the pattern. This is what happened to Spain, to Amsterdam, to Britain. This is what's coming for America. But here's what makes BlackRock's move even more terrifying. They're not just any institution. They're the institution that's supposed to have inside knowledge. They're the entity that works directly with the Federal Reserve. They're the company that bought bonds for the government during COVID. They're the ultimate insider. And they just voted no confidence in the system they helped create. When the ultimate insider starts moving money out, you know the end is close. When the entity that manages money for central banks starts diversifying away from the very assets those central banks print, you know something fundamental is broken. This doesn't happen by accident. BlackRock doesn't move $2.1 trillion on a whim. This move was planned. This move was calculated. This move was prepared over months, maybe years. They saw the mathematics. They saw the debt trajectory. They saw the foreign selling. They saw stage 3 beginning. And they got out before the crowd realized what was happening. But the signs are everywhere if you know what to look for. The Fed's balance sheet peaked at $9 trillion. Now they're trying to shrink it. But they can't shrink fast enough. The debt grows faster than they can reduce their holdings. The M2 money supply increased from $15.5 trillion to $21 trillion in 26 months. A 40% increase, the largest monetary expansion in American history, creating inflation, asset bubbles, wealth inequality, all the classic signs of stage 2 transitioning to stage 3. Every major financial institution is restructuring. JP Morgan restructured allocations. Goldman reduced U.S. equity recommendations. Morgan Stanley increased international guidance. Bank of America reduced Treasury holdings by 15%. Wells Fargo shifted $200 billion into foreign assets. Citigroup opened new desks in Singapore and London while closing New York offices. Even pension funds are shifting. CalPERS increased international allocations from 35% to 55%. Texas teachers moved $50 billion into emerging market bonds. These aren't speculative moves. These are survival moves. The smart money is moving, just like they did in Spain in 1555, just like they did in Amsterdam in 1690, just like they did in London in 1949. The pattern is repeating. The cycle is continuing. The exodus is accelerating. And BlackRock just made it official. They just confirmed what the insiders have known for months. America has entered stage 3, the silent exodus phase, the phase where collapse becomes inevitable. This is where the danger escalates. Because once stage 3 reaches critical mass, stage 4 becomes inevitable. The mathematics take over. The debt spiral becomes unstoppable. The currency crisis becomes unavoidable. Think about the cascade. America pays over $1 trillion per year just on interest payments. More than defense spending, more than Medicare, more than education. Just interest, not paying down debt, just servicing what we already owe. And that's at current rates. What happens when rates rise? What happens when foreign buyers disappear completely? What happens when the Federal Reserve has to monetize 100% of new debt issuance? What happens when the world realizes America can never pay back $38 trillion? The same thing that happened to Spain. The same thing that happened to Amsterdam. The same thing that happened to Britain. Currency collapse. Reserve status lost. Empire ended. Wealth transferred. Power shifted. But this time it's bigger. This time it's global. This time it's systemic. Spain's collapse didn't crash the world economy. Britain's decline didn't destroy the international monetary system. But America's fall will. Because the entire global financial architecture is built on dollar supremacy. When the dollar loses reserve status, the whole system resets. Violently. Chaotically. Destructively. Every dollar-denominated asset reprices. Every pension fund holding treasury bonds gets destroyed. Every savings account holding dollars gets wiped out. Every retiree depending on dollar-based investments gets annihilated. This is why BlackRock moved $2.1 trillion. This is why they're diversifying into assets that don't depend on American dominance. European infrastructure, Asian real estate, emerging market bonds, commodities, gold, energy, resources, assets that hold value when currencies fail, assets that maintain purchasing power when empires collapse, assets that transfer wealth rather than destroy it. They know what's coming. They've seen the historical pattern. They've done the mathematics. They've read the intelligence reports. They've positioned for stage 4. They've prepared for the collapse. The question is whether you have. Because here's what nobody's telling you, what nobody wants you to understand, what the media won't report and the politicians won't admit. The timeline is accelerating. Stage 3 used to last decades. Spain took 40 years, Britain took 30, but in our hyper-connected world, cycles are compressing. Feedback loops are faster. Contagion is instant. When confidence breaks, it breaks at light speed. When capital flees, it flees instantly. We saw it with the pound in 1992, the Asian tigers in 1997, the ruble in 1998. But those were peripheral currencies. This time, it's the reserve currency, the dollar that backs everything, the dollar that denominates oil, the dollar that settles international trade. This time, there's nowhere to hide, except outside the system entirely. BlackRock knows this, the smart money knows this, the insiders know this, the foreign creditors know this. The only people who don't know this are the American public, the people whose wealth is about to be transferred, the people whose savings are about to be destroyed, the people who still believe in American exceptionalism while the empire crumbles around them. The mathematics are inevitable. The pattern is absolute. The timeline is accelerating. The exodus has begun. BlackRock just started the countdown clock. $2.1 trillion moved out of America is the starting gun for stage 4. The only question is whether you'll position correctly before it hits 0. Because when stage 4 arrives, there won't be time to react. There won't be opportunities to reposition. There will only be winners and losers. Those who saw it coming and those who didn't. Those who prepared and those who ignored the pattern. The choice is yours. But the clock is ticking. And BlackRock just told you what time it is.